chaos, ambition, and the struggle for absolute power. These are the forces that ripped apart the ancient world's greatest republic. From Marius and Sulla's bloody feud to Caesar's fateful march across the Rubicon, and on to Antony and Octavian's final confrontation, the Roman civil wars reshaped the destiny of Rome and laid the foundations for an empire that would echo through history. How did a single city on the Tiber River collapse into a series of brutal conflicts that produced timeless legends and unstoppable tyrants? Buckle up, because we're diving into an epic 2-hour journey through intrigue, betrayal, and battlefield heroics that forged, and then shattered, the Roman Republic. Welcome to Shadows of the Republic, the epic Roman Civil Wars documentary. In this comprehensive 2-hour exploration, we chart Rome's transition from a proud republic to an imperial colossus underpinned by civil strife. We'll uncover the political machinations that pitted statesmen against each other, the swirling alliances that formed and fell apart, and the ambition that drove generals like Julius Caesar, Pompey, Sulla, and Mark Antony. But we'll also shine a light on the lesser-known voices, ordinary Roman citizens and soldiers caught up in the whirlwind of violence. Tonight, we'll peel back the layers on the turbulent power struggles, from the opening salvos of Marius versus Sulla to the ultimate victory of Octavian, later known as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. If you're ready for conspiracies, legendary battles, and unwavering resolve, stay tuned. Our chronicle of the Roman Civil Wars begins now. In the century before the birth of Christ, the Roman Republic stood at a crossroads. It ruled vast territories across the Mediterranean, yet internal fractures threatened its stability. Political reforms that once empowered the populace instead birthed social unrest. Ambitious patricians vied for power, while ordinary Romans grew resentful of corruption in the Senate. At the heart of this tension lay class divisions. Wealthy nobles monopolized land and political influence, leaving lower-class citizens and returning veterans embittered. Meanwhile, the legions, once loyal to Rome above all else, increasingly pledged allegiance to their generals. As the Senate struggled with reforms, the stage was set for the rise of influential warlords who would exploit Rome's divisions for personal gain. The first cracks in Rome's foundations appeared when Gaius Marius, a popular general credited with military reforms, clashed with Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a patrician determined to preserve the old order. Marius's success in recruiting landless citizens into the legions granted him immense loyalty among soldiers. Sulla, in turn, leveraged his noble connections and cunning political acumen. Their rivalry exploded into a civil war around 88 BC, each calling upon legions fiercely devoted to them personally. In a shocking escalation, Sulla marched on Rome, setting a grim precedent. Marius retaliated with brutality, leading to the Marian purges. When the dust settled, Sulla seized power as dictator, rewriting the constitution to uphold the Senate's authority while violently suppressing dissent. His reign of terror left a legacy of fear that would echo in future generations. With Sulla's death, the Republic lurched from crisis to crisis. Though he attempted to restore senatorial rule, the seeds of future conflicts were already sown. Allies of Marius sought revenge, while senators who had flourished under Sulla's dictatorship scrambled to retain their privileges. Across the provinces, governors grew bolder, testing the central government's resolve. The newly reformed legal system couldn't silence the discontent that festered among the Roman lower classes. Military posts on the frontier demanded leadership, and that need opened the door for charismatic generals, men who could quell barbarian threats and rally legions at will. At home, the common citizen faced high taxes, land shortages, and swirling rumors of new revolts. Whispers spread that only a strong figure, perhaps another dictator, could bring order. Amid these tensions rose ambitious leaders itching for the chance to seize power and enact their own visions for Rome. Into this volatile landscape stepped 3 men who hoped to steer Rome to their advantage: Julius Caesar, Gnaeus Pompey Magnus, and Marcus Licinius Crassus. This informal alliance, known as the First Triumvirate, was born out of each man's strengths: Caesar's growing popularity and oratory skills, Pompey's seasoned generalship, and Crassus's immense wealth. Together, they manipulated elections, passed legislation favoring their interests, and divided provincial commands. Yet, behind the smiling facade, each plotted for supremacy. Caesar's conquest of Gaul vaulted him to legendary status. Pompey, once Caesar's ally, turned wary of his partner's skyrocketing fame. Crassus's death in the east left a power vacuum, intensifying tensions between Caesar and Pompey. While the triumvirate momentarily postponed another civil war, it also laid the groundwork for the next massive confrontation. The Senate, fearing Caesar's rise, forged alliances with Pompey. The stage was set for Rome's next, and perhaps most famous, internal cataclysm. In 49 BC, the fragile peace snapped. The Senate, aligning with Pompey, ordered Caesar to disband his legions and return to Rome as a private citizen. For Caesar, compliance meant political oblivion, and possibly worse. Standing at the banks of the Rubicon River, he made his fateful decision, alia iacta est, the die is cast. When Caesar led his legion across the Rubicon, he violated Roman law forbidding a general from entering Italy with armed forces. Overnight, he transformed from a celebrated commander into a rebel, plunging the Republic into full-scale civil war. Cities in northern Italy welcomed him, while Pompey and the Senate hastily evacuated Rome for safer ground in Greece. The moment symbolized more than the start of a war. It epitomized the end of illusions that Rome could ever quell its internal divisions peacefully. From this point on, Caesar and Pompey would vie for absolute power. Pompey assembled a formidable force in the eastern Mediterranean, buoyed by loyal senators, while Caesar rapidly secured Italy and Spain. Their armies eventually clashed in Greece, most notably at Pharsalus in 48 BC. Outnumbered, Caesar displayed tactical brilliance, feinting weaknesses that lured Pompey's cavalry into a trap. The ensuing victory was a watershed. Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was tragically assassinated under the misguided belief that his death would appease Caesar. Instead, Caesar mourned his old ally turned rival, a gesture revealing complex loyalties that once bound these titans. With Pompey gone, opposition to Caesar crumbled. Yet, civil war flickered on in Africa and Spain, as Caesar hunted down remaining Republican forces. When the dust settled, Caesar returned to Rome, triumphant. But the republic he aimed to rule was irreparably changed, and new conspiracies simmered beneath the surface. As dictator, Caesar sought grand reforms, land distributions, Senate expansion, calendar overhauls, transforming Rome with astonishing speed. These measures, while modernizing, alienated traditionalists who resented Caesar's concentration of power. Behind the scenes, whispers of tyranny echoed through the halls of the Senate. Caesar's acceptance of perpetual dictatorship fueled fears that the Republic was breathing its last. Yet, among the populace, Caesar enjoyed broad support. Public festivities, largesse, and progressive policies garnered love from the masses. Still, ambition breeds envy. Prominent senators like Marcus Brutus and Cassius brooded over the future. They concocted a plot, convinced that Caesar's removal could restore Republican liberty. The final blow was near, and Rome was about to lose the man who, for better or worse, had dominated its destiny. On March 15, 44 BC, the Ides of March, Caesar entered the Senate, ignoring multiple warnings. A group of conspirators swiftly closed in. Knives flashed, and the unthinkable happened. The great conqueror fell to the daggers of men who once called him friend. Legend holds that Caesar's final words expressed shock at Brutus's betrayal. In the aftermath, panic roiled the city. Some hailed the assassins as liberators, others saw them as traitors. Caesar's body lay on the Senate floor, a grim testament to the cost of unbridled power. Within days, the conspirators realized that eliminating Caesar did not eliminate his legacy. The ordinary people of Rome mourned him, and the Senate found itself paralyzed by new divisions. In the power vacuum, three figures emerged to claim Caesar's mantle: Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal friend and renowned orator; Gaius Octavian, Caesar's young adopted heir; and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, a politically connected patron of the legions. Their pact, the Second Triumvirate, aimed to avenge Caesar's death and maintain control. This new trio wielded brutal methods, instituting proscriptions to eliminate rivals. Rome again witnessed political purges, reminiscent of Sulla's era. The conspirators, Brutus and Cassius, amassed their own armies in the east, but Antony and Octavian ultimately cornered them at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. With the Republican forces defeated, the triumvirate seemed unassailable. Yet, alliances in Rome rarely last. Rivalries between Antony and Octavian deepened, setting the stage for yet another cataclysmic civil war that would decide Rome's final transformation into an empire. Following Philippi, Antony governed the eastern provinces, forging a controversial alliance and romance with Cleopatra VII of Egypt. Cleopatra, famed for her political acumen and captivating allure, courted Antony's favor, providing him resources and strategic strongholds. Rome gossiped ceaselessly about their affair. Back in the capital, Octavian cultivated an image of piety and tradition, subtly painting Antony as seduced by Eastern decadence. Tensions soared when Antony officially divorced Octavia, Octavian's sister, in favor of Cleopatra. In Rome, the Senate bristled at perceived betrayal. This union also represented a deep political threat. With Cleopatra's wealth and Egyptian troops, Antony could challenge Octavian's claim to power. Sensational rumors flooded the streets that Antony intended to partition Rome's territories among Cleopatra's children. Lines were being drawn for one final conflict that would decide the fate of the Republic once and for all. In Rome, Octavian fanned the flames of public outrage. He denounced Antony as a traitor enthralled by a foreign queen. Through shrewd propaganda, he cast himself as the defender of Roman virtue, implying that Antony sought to impose an Egyptian monarchy. Gathering loyal legions, Octavian summoned the Senate to declare war, not on Antony directly, but on Cleopatra, thus framing Antony as colluding with an enemy of Rome. Meanwhile, Antony marshaled a formidable navy and army in Greece, determined to contest Octavian's claims. The final confrontation loomed over the Mediterranean. Cities pledged allegiance to one side or the other, while Roman citizens nervously guessed at the outcome. Historians would later note how effectively Octavian weaponized public opinion, setting the stage for a decisive showdown on both land and sea. On September 2, 31 BC, off the coast of Greece, the fleets of Antony and Cleopatra confronted Octavian's navy under Agrippa's command. Both sides understood that Actium could determine the future of the Roman world. The sea raged with the clash of triremes, ballista bolts, and boarding actions. Octavian's ships, though smaller, were more agile and well-coordinated, thanks to Agrippa's innovative tactics. Antony struggled with a divided command, and Cleopatra's presence introduced complexity. Her Egyptian galleys loomed at the edges, uncertain of the battle's ebb and flow. Mid-fight, Cleopatra withdrew her fleet. Antony, caught between pressing the attack and following Cleopatra, broke off to pursue his queen, effectively abandoning the bulk of his forces. The rout was swift. Octavian's navy sealed a crushing victory. Actium not only destroyed Antony's military might but also signaled the end of the last major civil war of the Republic. After Actium, Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Alexandria, their forces diminished and morale broken. As Octavian advanced, it became clear that no more allies would come. Inside Alexandria's regal corridors, desperation set in. Antony, bereft of options, attempted one last stand to defend his honor and his love. Ultimately, faced with inevitable defeat, Antony took his own life upon false news that Cleopatra was dead. Cleopatra, captured but determined not to be paraded in Octavian's triumph, famously ended her life via snakebite, an event shrouded in mystery and legend. Their tragic ends closed the final chapter of the Roman civil wars, and with it, the age of the Hellenistic monarchs. With Antony and Cleopatra gone, Octavian returned to Rome as the unchallenged master of the Roman world. In 27 BC, he formally relinquished extraordinary powers, only for the Senate to grant him the title Augustus. This gesture symbolized a new era, no longer a republic in practice, but a principate with Augustus at the helm. Though he carefully preserved the facade of republican institutions, ultimate authority rested in his hands. The legions revered him, the Senate deferred to him, and the populace rejoiced in relative peace after decades of strife. History would remember this as the dawn of the Roman Empire, one stabilized by the Pax Romana but shaped by the bitter lessons of civil war. The legacy of the Roman civil wars is profound. They shattered the very roots of republican governance, paving the way for a centralized autocracy that persisted for centuries. From Marius and Sulla to Caesar, Pompey, Antony, and Augustus, each phase introduced new power structures, social upheavals, and moral questions about loyalty and governance. Even in the centuries that followed, historians, philosophers, and leaders probed this epoch for lessons. the perils of concentrating too much power in one individual, the fragility of civic virtue, and the destructive potential of political violence. Yet, these wars also catalyzed reforms, military, administrative, and cultural, that allowed Rome to flourish as a Mediterranean superpower. This is the dual nature of the Roman civil wars, a tragedy that toppled a republic and gave birth to an empire, reminding us that out of chaos, new orders are often forged. Thank you for joining us on this in-depth expedition through the Roman civil wars. From the early strife between Marius and Sulla to the final act with Antony and Cleopatra, we've witnessed how ambition, rivalry, and the thirst for power reshaped the ancient world. If you enjoyed Shadows of the Republic, the epic Roman Civil Wars documentary, please like, subscribe, and share to spread this story of Rome's turbulent path. By understanding how the Republic fell, we gain insights into the delicate nature of governance, the perils of unchecked power, and the resilience of human societies in times of crisis. Stay curious, keep exploring history's grand dramas, and remember that even the mightiest empires begin and end with the choices of individuals.
Until next time.